It started with a phone call, late at night, on one of those quiet, ordinary Tuesdays. His voice was soft, a little unsure. Auntie, can I stay with you for a bit? No long explanations, no urgency, just that simple question. I didn't ask why. I didn't need to. Something in his voice told me this wasn't just a casual visit. I said yes. I hadn't seen Ayan in over a year. Life had a way of pulling people in different directions. But when he showed up 2 days later, suitcase in hand, and that same soft smile I remembered from his childhood, my quiet house felt different, warmer. He hugged me like he didn't want to let go. Not the polite kind of hug, but the kind that says, I needed this. I didn't push for details. I made him tea. We sat at the table in silence, the kind that feels safe, comfortable. In the days that followed, something in the house shifted. The air wasn't heavy anymore. We shared meals. We laughed over old home videos. He told me about little moments from his day. He even cooked for me sometimes, like it was the most natural thing in the world. One night, while I was answering emails, he came into the living room, 2 mugs of cocoa in his hands. You used to drink this before bed, he said, almost bashfully. I looked at him, and for the first time in a while, I really looked. Those weren't the eyes of the boy who used to run around my living room with sticky hands and messy hair. They were deeper now, gentle, filled with stories he hadn't yet told. We talked for hours that night, about life, growing up, feeling lost sometimes. I told him things I hadn't said out loud in years, about the silence, the loneliness, the heaviness that sometimes clung to the walls. He listened, not to respond, but to understand. And that kind of attention, it made me feel seen. The next morning, I caught myself humming in the kitchen. I hadn't done that in ages. He walked in, half asleep, smiled, and said, You look happy today. And I was, not because of anything dramatic, but because of something simple, connection. He made my space feel full again. It was innocent. It was warm. It was something I didn't know I'd been missing. Night times became our thing. After the world quieted down, we'd sit together, sometimes talking, sometimes not, but always present. He opened up to me slowly, about feeling stuck, chasing expectations that never quite fit, the pressure of it all. And in return, I shared the parts of my past I'd kept tucked away. There was no judgment, just a growing understanding that felt more intimate than anything I'd experienced in a long, long time. I started noticing the little things, how he always noticed me, when I was tired, when I needed help, the way his laugh came more from his eyes than his mouth. One night, while handing me a plate of food he'd made, our hands brushed, just for a second. But the jolt was real, quick, unspoken, but impossible to ignore. Neither of us said a word, but when I looked at him, he was already looking at me, longer than necessary, and I didn't look away. I began thinking about him when he wasn't around, remembering his voice, smiling at little things he'd said earlier that day. It wasn't supposed to be like this, but it didn't feel wrong. It felt real. He began asking quiet questions about love, about falling for someone unexpectedly. They weren't direct, but I could feel the weight behind them. Do you think it's possible to feel something new with someone you've always known? He asked one night. I didn't answer. I just looked at him, and my heart answered for me. We never named what was happening, but we felt it. I stopped trying to resist it, because love doesn't always show up the way you expect. One morning, he brought me breakfast in bed. Nothing fancy, just toast, eggs, coffee, but the care behind it almost made me cry. Later that day, we sat outside in the sun, and he said softly, I don't know what this is, but being near you feels like peace I've never known. I felt the same, but I didn't know how to say it. Not yet. Still, I noticed everything. The way he remembered how I liked my tea, my favorite music, the scent I wore. His attention wasn't casual, it was intentional. and I started to feel something deep, tender, and grounding. One night, he lingered in the hallway, like he wanted to speak but didn't know how. "What is it?" I asked gently. He took a breath and looked straight at me. "You've changed something in me," he whispered. "Being near you, it feels like home." I didn't say anything. I didn't need to. The silence between us spoke louder than words ever could. After that, we didn't talk as much, but not because anything was wrong. We just didn't need words anymore. His glances lasted longer. My thoughts ran deeper. And one night, while we sat side by side on the couch, he gently took my hand, held it. No words, just fingers curled around mine. Quiet, simple, real. For the first time in years, I felt wanted. Not for what I could do, but for who I was. Love, I've learned, doesn't always come with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives in soft moments, in the way someone brings you tea without asking, in how they look at you like you matter. The turning point came quietly. We sat across from one another, full of everything we hadn't dared to say. "I think about you," he said, in ways I never expected to. "I don't know if it's wrong or right, but it's real." I held his gaze. I felt every word in my bones. And finally, I let go of fear. "You're not alone," I told him. "I feel it too." And just like that, everything shifted. From that night on, we stopped hiding behind polite roles and familiar titles. He began calling me beautiful, not as a compliment, but as a truth, as if he couldn't see me any other way. And I believed him, because the way he said it made me feel beautiful. We didn't rush. We let the connection guide us, held hands when it felt right, shared space without needing to fill it. And often I'd catch him looking at me like he still couldn't believe I was real. I felt the same. Our story didn't need permission. It didn't need a label. It needed only honesty, and we had that. What began as a quiet visit turned into something neither of us saw coming. Not lust, not fantasy, but love. Slow, emotional, tender. And sometimes that's all it takes. A soft knock on your door, a cup of cocoa, and a heart that finally feels like it's come home.